especially in hockey, because the NBA and the NFL, you have Black players and you have more players of diversity that make up those sports. Hockey's predominantly white. It's no secret. And so it's the one that seems to really lag behind when it comes to these social injustices sometimes. And it needs to change, and we need to be paying attention. And again, truly do something to force change, I think.
Yeah. And just to welcome everybody, this is Bardown Beauties. I'm producer Fred. That's Jesse.
I'm Jesse. I think we missed hitting the live button, Fred. You have one job.
I always miss that one job.
I'm like looking, I'm like, we're not live. So
Yeah.
we're now officially live. Welcome everybody again. We haven't covered a whole lot yet,
No.
but we really wanted to do this live session to have these important conversations. I mean, following the murder of George Floyd, we were quite vocal about the ways that we wanted to educate ourselves and really learn about the systemic racism that plagues our country and how that trickles into sports. And right now, at the end of the day, sports don't matter. I understand they're a distraction, but again, that speaks to the white privilege that we even have the option to use sports as a distraction, right? And right now, I think they're taking a good hard look and say, hey, we can't be distracted anymore. The murders need to stop. I mean, we need to stop killing Black men and women and children, and we need to make a real change. And so for the NHL today to cancel their games for today and tomorrow, following suit of the NFL and the NBA, the NFL isn't doing it. Their practices though, right? Have been
WNBA, MLS.
WNBA, right? I mean, it needs to happen. And again, I know, we get sports they're fun, but it's just a game. As I tweeted out earlier today, it's just a game. And there are much more important things. I mean, human rights take priority over that. Pro athletes have opinions. They're people too. Us as media members, we have opinions. We're people too. And it's something we care about. Again, I've taken this time in the month since George Floyd's murder to educate myself and try to make sure that I'm being true to who I am, right? And learning more about what can be done and how we can be changing. And I think just being vocal and again, seeing the support of the NHL players today behind Ryan Reeves and his powerful statement says a lot. And that's what they've been asking to do. Matt Dumba and the Hockey Diversity Alliance have been asking for their white teammates and friends and family to support. It's not on the people of color and diversity to make these changes anymore. Now it's up to us to really help further that.
Well, and it's about getting out of your comfort zone. And I think if you're going to look at athletes across the board from like where a lot of athletes come from, hockey is one of the richest startup sports out there. It's hard to get ice. It's hard to get equipment. It's hard to be schlepped back and forth to games. And then when you get really good, having to, travel around the country, go to these tournaments, go to these leagues. So it's a very, very hard sport to become a professional in if you don't come from wealth. And so wealth also equals comfortability, and it usually equals a lack of diversity and a knowledge of the greater world and struggles and sacrifices that people go through. So when you have a sport that's a very high barrier to enter, that breeds people who are elite and elitists and comfortable. So it takes a lot to get those people to understand and to sit there and listen and say, you know what, we actually do need to do something because this isn't fair to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, we have that white privilege that we're able to, we need to speak up and we need to just support people like players like Matt Dumba, again, who are working so actively. It can't just be on their shoulders. And we want to, everyone loves this game, right? I love the game of hockey, and it breaks my heart that it is so exclusive and not everybody truly feels welcome in it. And it's a change that I want to see. I don't want a little Black kid to ever feel like he's not welcome on the ice. That's not fair. I mean, nobody wants, again, I think if you put it into the child's perspective, right? Like we start playing this game, again, it's a game as a child. And as a white female, there's very few times that I've ever felt that I couldn't go and play something, right? And that's not the case when it comes to hockey and Black kids. And again, there are so many different elements and so many layers to that because it is expensive, and it comes into play there too. And you have great groups like Dynamites who are trying to introduce the game. I know Allie Thunstrom with the Minnesota Whitecaps said that she's trying to work on something with the Whitecaps to do things. And Minnesota Hockey does a great job in trying to really help diversify that and have those conversations. And USA Hockey needs to do a little bit bit more too. I think they're trying to make those efforts and strides. But again, you have to start at the grassroots level. And that helps to have the NHL backing behind that too. I would love to see, again, the NHL still isn't fully on board with the Hockey Diversity Alliance. That's a single one-off thing, which is ridiculous. It's kind of mind blowing. It's like, you have your players. These are your players, right? These are your guys. You need to support them, and you need to show more support. And again,
how much do you think is it that there is a very high level of international players?
Sorry, say that again.
How much is it that they're not stepping up because maybe some players say, you know what, this isn't my problem. I'm from Finland. I'm from Sweden. I'm from Canada. I mean, all those countries experience racism.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
You go to Europe and you go to a hockey game, you go to a soccer match. And you'll sometimes see like bananas being thrown on the field when a black player does something wrong.
Right.
Racism exists everywhere. But maybe it's one of those things where because there's so many international participants that maybe they don't see it as that big of a deal.
I mean, that's a very valid point, I'm sure. But like you had mentioned, racism isn't specific to America. It's probably, I think, more aggressive here because it can be fueled. And currently we have, people in leadership roles who perpetuate those stigmas too a little bit, right? Where it kind of diversifies this. But Canada, for instance, the Indigenous people have faced racism for years too. Yeah. And again, Matt Dumba has spoken up about that too. And that's why if you guys recall, when he had knelt for the anthem, he does wish he would have knelt for the Canadian anthem as well. And you saw during the playoffs, he raised his fists during both. But I think that probably does play a slight factor, right? But I think a lot of these players, when they're in the NHL, they call this home too, right? These guys live in, Matt Dumba has been very vocal about Lake Street cleanup and all of that stuff. He's got his own funding because he calls this home. He calls Minnesota home. He calls America home too. I think what really got me as it pertains to our country was Doc Rivers. I'm not sure if anybody had seen kind of his speech, and he got very emotional. And Doc Rivers is a big, bulking guy, right? And he said, it's so hard for us to continue to love this country when it doesn't love us back. And again, that's gut wrenching. And again, that's sports too. And it happens in sports. And so it's like, you can't expect these athletes to go out and perform like circus animals when you're not treating them with respect. And it's, again, it transcends sports. There are bigger issues in life. And again, we as Bardown Beauties as a whole, we want to help support that and change that. So again, if you have any ideas or ways that we should be doing more, we want to use this platform to truly do good and to make a change and help make those efforts in creating a more welcoming game in hockey.
Yeah. And Trevor Noah, I kind of listen to some of his perspective a lot because he comes from South Africa where, with apartheid and everything. So he's very well aware of what racism is and can do. And that even deep in the 20th century, it was very prevalent in South Africa. But he brought up a really good point when the whole George Floyd stuff went down is about having a social contract. You follow the law. You're expected to be able to exist in the world because you follow laws, you follow rules, and you should be able to be provided the same experience out in society because you do follow those laws and those rules. But when society does not treat you equal in that social contract, what makes these people live up to their social contracts if they're not getting the same shake? Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of so many things keep coming to mind that has happened in the last just a few months. It's just crazy. And then you can just see how tense everything is, especially with last night in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Right now I'm in St. Paul and we're under a curfew.
Yeah.
Started at 8:00. It's 8:43. I can't leave my house.
Right.
And it's the tension in the air, and a lot of it was opportunists that were seeing a chaotic situation. But it was all spiraled out of control because there was a rumor. Mm-hmm. And the tension is just so high right now. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what to say about it.
In regards to that, and of course, I know everyone has their opinions, and I'm always welcome to hear the opinions, right? And looting is not great. But again, who are we to tell anybody how to react to the grief? I saw a really good quote earlier today that I posted where it had said, I think you were so busy looking for a riot that you missed the gathering of the grieving. I think you were so busy looking for looters that you missed the lament and heartbreak of a community. I think you were so busy looking for trouble that you missed the tragedy of systemic racialized trauma on the bodies of Black and brown people. Tonight, tomorrow, and even the next day, I beg for you to look again. Just look again. So again, I mean, it's just things. It's just, it's buildings. It's wrong. It's not okay. And you're right. I think a lot of those people aren't doing it for the right reasons. However, at the end of the day, that's not the problem. It's like, stop shooting Black people, right? Like stop, that's really all you got to do. There needs to be a better way to go about that. Again, as white people, we could never possibly understand what that's like, right? Like, I don't have to worry about my 2 little boys going for a drive and getting pulled over. That doesn't, it won't be a concern. The worst they'll get would be a ticket. It's not a death sentence. And that's where it is. It's, again, I put it into perspective of children. Think of your own kids, right? You don't have to worry about that. Black people do. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, Jacob, the Kenosha situation, his kids were in the car. So those kids now have that, and his family was around, everybody in that community. I mean, could you imagine witnessing something like that? It's horrific to think. And because why would you trust the police? Why would you listen to a police officer if that was your kind of memory? Like, well, they shot my dad right in front of me. Again, you don't have to worry about that. I don't think that my husband would be shot with the kids in the car. It wouldn't be that way. And so again, that's why taking a break from sports and talking about this stuff is important. This is important. It's sports don't exist right now, and as they shouldn't.
Yeah, I do want to also make it very clear that we're not condoning riots or violence or burning down buildings or stuff like that, and that should not be happening.
Right.
And I think the way I've always looked at the riots, and I've always looked at the destruction and stuff, is that it's kind of like when you're sick and you have a cough. To me, the riots are a symptom of a larger problem. You don't want a cough. You don't want to be hacking up a lung all night long, but it's also it's just a symptom of a bigger problem. And I did want to bring up a good tweet I saw. Do you know who Sami Zayn is, Jesse?
I don't.
He's a wrestler.
Oh yeah, definitely don't.
That's
I Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was my guy back in the day.
Too long ago. He was no. But Sami Zayn is a WWE wrestler, and he comes from a very interesting perspective where he is Syrian. He's from Canada, and he's Syrian. So he has done a lot of work trying to raise money for relief in Syria. But he's put out a tweet 6 hours ago. It says, crazy how folks will double down to defend actions their side has deemed good, no matter how reprehensible or antithetical they may be to their own personal value systems. Tribalism to a point is understandable, but don't let them own your mind. Don't let them kill your heart. And I really, really liked that because it kind of points to what's going on right now. It's just everybody's like them. And it's like, that's not going to solve the problems. It's just not.
No. What do you think that the NHL, I mean, and I'm excited. I get to chat with Blake Bolden, who is with the PWHPA Association tomorrow, and we'll have a little bit of tidbit live for that as well. And then actually I'm chatting with Matt Dumba next week. So we'll be sure to include that, and I'll obviously ask these questions of him. But Fred, what do you think you'd like to see from the NHL? Again, we kind of touched on it right at the very beginning, was that they're a little late to the party. But it's nice that they at least showed up to the party, I guess. But it's also, they kind of do it in such a performative way that it doesn't seem genuine. And again, it's a sport that doesn't have diversity and color, but it seems like they don't support the diverse players either, right? It lags and it's very behind. But what do you think? What would you like to see them do to feel like, they really are taking a stance and taking it seriously?
Well, again, I pointed this out before I hit the live button. I'm going to say it again. The NBA hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
The MLS hasn't done anything. The MLB hasn't done anything. Yeah. The players are the ones who have done something. Mm-hmm. So if anything, the NHL actually did something last night and did a moment of silence where the NBA didn't have that planned. MLB didn't have that plan. MLS didn't have that plan. The players stepped up and said, no more. we're not going to play tonight because we need to take a stand. So I think the NHL in their situation, actually, like them doing that little moment of silence, was the most that any sports leagues have done. But none of the players did anything last night. And that's when everybody was really up in arms of like, why aren't we doing anything? So to me, if the NHL actually wants to do something, I always think kind of back to, I don't know why I said always, but right now I'm thinking back to that conversation we had with Alex Mandrecki, who is with the Seattle now Kraken, where she talked about getting women into sports requires a pipeline. If you're actually committed to diversity, you can't just go, boom, we're diverse.
Right.
You can't just have a bunch of people of color playing for the NHL. You have to build it up from the bottom. You have to make an absolute commitment to making hockey accessible to everybody. And that's really hard because it's not just like you can just go to a random park and have a ball field.
Right.
You know, you have to have ice. You have to have ice time. And all the rinks across the country are packed. And if you're not in Minnesota or a very, very heavily hockey community, you're not going to be able to find that. I mean, you think back to like Jason Zucker. There's one guy from Vegas.
Yeah, right.
Zucker.
No, 100%.
You're not going to find ice in Las Vegas. So it's a commitment to trying to make the game accessible for like teams like the Dynamites that we have here in Minnesota, who really try to reach out to lower income families and kids to get them to play a simple game called hockey. To me, that's how you're going to make it more diverse.
And again, I mean, and what Dynamites does, for those unfamiliar, please come with me to a Learn to Skate. I do it every spring, obviously this spring not, but it's a phenomenal program driven mostly on donations. But in order for them to even make that work, is they have to pick the kids up, and you have to go through all these different levels too. It's not just as simple as saying, here, we'll give you some skates and we'll give you the ice. You have to like get the kids there, and you're teaching them, it goes beyond hockey, and you're introducing them to a sport. And we had Nagach on, who was a former Dynamite, who's now playing high school hockey and is working with Minnesota teen activism, because again, that's what she learned, was how to just kind of be a leader. And she was phenomenal. So please be sure to go listen back a couple episodes, find that special ep we had with her, because she's a shining example of what that program does and what hockey can do for people. Again, I think that's why I really do want to make hockey for everyone, because it's a phenomenal game, and everybody should feel welcome to play it, and everybody should feel supported when they play it. And again, it's freaking 2020, you guys. Like the fact that we still have to have these conversations, it's just kind of like, come on. But at the same time, maybe we're not saying them loud enough. Maybe these conversations obviously have not been said loud enough. And I think by not having sports tonight and tomorrow, and for however long these players decide that should be, it's an okay thing. It's a good thing, because we can't just keep sweeping this under the rug. Right. George Floyd happened a few months ago, and it was, hoorah for a while, and then it stopped, and it needs to, and you can't wait for the next Black person to be killed to have this conversation again. Like, let's really do something now. Let's have those conversations again. Educate yourselves, and myself. I know I certainly reached out to some of my Black friends on tips on what to watch and what to read. And it's been very fascinating, and it's been very eye-opening. I highly recommend watching 13th on Netflix. I'm sure you guys have heard that a lot too. But I challenge you to take this time. I know you miss sports. I get it. I really do. And I never want to chastise anybody for saying those things like, oh, it's the distraction and yada, yada. And that's completely okay. I understand that. But there are more important things. And I beg of you to kind of step outside of your bubble a little bit and think of others, and just kind of have that empathy there, and realize that, hey, we're, as white people, we're the part of the problem. So we need to figure out how we can help support and change and do what we can. Again, Matt Dumba's a beloved figure here in this community. And, if you're a fan of his, then you need to stand with him. Don't stand behind him, stand next to him and say, yes, let's go do this. Let's get to work and make some changes.
I really hope that when the season actually finally comes around, I really hope it's not a situation where someone goes up to Matt in the locker room and says, okay, are you ready to play? Or are we still going to play, do this activist stuff?
Yeah.
Because that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, and because people are so wound up on winning a Stanley Cup and winning, which they should be wound up to win. But that's happened so many times in the past of just like, okay, you done with this?
Mm-hmm.
You ready to play? Or are you
Right.
going to keep doing your thing?
Yeah.
I really hope that he's able to continue this fight and continue this and not turn into a Colin Kaepernick situation.
Right.
I really hope he can still be a successful hockey player and an activist because his voice is sorely needed.
Mm-hmm. And I think he's doing a phenomenal job. And again, all of the Hockey Diversity Alliance really is. I would like to see more ladies on that board, though, gentlemen. If you want to grab some of those, I'd mentioned Blake Bolden, get her butt on there. No, but I think you need more of that. And again, I think the NHL needs to step up and say, you know what, we do support this, and not just be all lip service. I think we're gonna wrap it up because we don't want to just keep droning on and on. And my old butt wants to probably get ready for bed.
I like droning on and on. I'm okay.
I know you do. I know you do. Usually you're the one that's like, we got to wrap this up. We got to get going.
This is live. We unlimited.
This is
keep
true.
it going.
This is true.
You can fire me back up about the NCAA if you want.
Do you guys want to hear about the NCAA? Oh, people are dropping. People are like, we're out. Nope, sorry, never mind.
No, yeah. I'm gone.
Again, no, thank you guys. We just thought it was important for us to kind of step on here and just chat about what's going on. Again, sports are a part of what we do, but we're humans at the end of the day, and we fully support Black Lives Matter and every person that's fighting to make a change in hockey and in the world in general. So let's be a part of that. Be sure, check out, we'll have some stuff from Blake Bolden tomorrow. Matt Dumba, obviously, new podcast ep drops on Monday. We have Mitch Helgerson of the Minnesota Wild joining us. If you have any questions for him, be sure to get those in before tomorrow morning when we record. That's it, Fred?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.